All right, let's look at the different measurements in human development, how we go about researching how we change and stay the same throughout life. So one way to do that is through systematic observation. You can do it in a natural setting where you're watching people go about their daily life, or you can do it more in a structured laboratory setting, like Bandura did with the Bobo doll. Other ways to measure human development is by sampling behavior with tasks. So say you were interested in measuring how well people can pick up on emotional expression on the face, you can use photos of faces instead of having people there making all these different faces. So that's sampling behavior with tasks. Self-reports or surveys are a good way to get people's answers to questions about whatever topic it is that you're interested in. Physiological measures refers to measuring actual physical responses in the body to be able to tell maybe what's going on with the person. So an example of that is measuring men's penis circumference. There's a video to be able to tell if there's some sort of sexual attraction. So there's a video on YouTube called Homoerotic Homophobes. It's about 4 minutes long. I recommend you look that up and watch. That's an example of physiological measures. So they're measuring the men's physical response to looking at different videos and what conclusions the researchers came to. Some different terms that you need to know when you are talking about research in psychology is reliability. Reliability refers to how consistent, how reliable are the scores that you get from some sort of measurement. So if you do, say, an intelligence test and then you do it again a couple weeks later, how consistent, how reliable are those scores? Validity refers to how true or how accurate or how well whatever it is that you are measuring, how well it measures what it's supposed to. So if it's an intelligence test, if it is considered to be very valid, it's going to match up pretty well with the results of other intelligence scores. So representative sampling, you want to be able to get a sample or a smaller group of the bigger group that you're interested in. So the population is that whole group that you're interested in. So maybe teenage boys, let's say. That's the population. You can't go out and have every single teenage boy be part of a study, so you need to get a sample. So the bigger the sample that you can get, and the more diverse it is or more random it is, the better it will be. It will represent the greater population. The more you can generalize the results of the study. So sample is that smaller group within the population that is actually part of the study. All right, let's look at some other designs for research. There are correlational studies. Whenever you hear correlation, you should think of relationship. You do a correlational study to find out how one variable or one thing relates to another thing. So correlation, immediately in your head, you should think of a relationship. All right. So when you do a correlational study, you'll maybe do a survey and you'll get some information about how many hours per day do you study and what's your GPA. So then you will go through and do a whole bunch of different calculations and you'll get a correlational coefficient. And it looks kind of like this R, and then there's usually a plus or minus. There's a decimal point, and then there's a number. So the plus or minus means that that's the direction of the relationship. So if there's a plus, it means that both variables, they both increase or decrease at the same time. They both do the same thing. When you see a negative there, it means that one variable goes up, the other goes down. All right. So as partying goes up, GPA might go down, all right? So that's a negative correlation because one thing is increasing and the other is decreasing. The number part over here is about how strong is that relationship between the two variables. You want to look at, when you're talking about the relationship, you don't want to consider the plus or minus. You're just looking at how big is the number, how close is it to the number one. So the strength refers to how close is that number to the number one. And the closer it is to number 1, the stronger that relationship is. And the direction refers to the plus or minus are the variables. If it's a plus, going in the same direction, either increasing at the same time or decreasing at the same time, or is one increasing and decreasing. So correlational refers to the relationship between two things, but it doesn't mean that one thing causes another. Okay, it just means that there's a relationship. Like research has found that as as ice cream sales increase, so do murders. So there's a positive correlation between ice cream sales and murder. Obviously, ice cream does not cause people to murder. What it is that there's a third variable or a confounding variable that's not part of this sentence here. That is really the common factor, and that's hotter weather. So in the summer, you end up seeing ice cream sales go up, as well as murders go up. So it's not like ice cream causes murders, they just have a positive relationship. So when you hear about a correlational study, don't think that one thing causes another. It just shows there's a relationship there, okay? If you want to know if something actually causes change in another variable, you have to do an experiment. Experiment is the only way you can know if there is a cause, if something causes something else, okay? So say you're interested in like Bender was, observing aggressive behavior and wondering if it causes aggression. Okay, so you set up, if you want to know what the independent variable is or the dependent variable, you set up this sentence. I am curious if watching violence causes aggressive behavior. So watching violence is the independent variable, and the dependent is aggressive behavior. So I would set up an experiment, and I would have this this group, the sample, and I would randomly put them into either the control group or the experimental group. The experimental group is that group that's going to be exposed to the independent variable. So in Bender's study, they were the ones that were exposed to watching the adults beating up that Bobo doll. And then afterwards, and then the placebo or the control group, they're not going to be watching that aggression. Maybe they'll watch some adults just, maybe sitting there reading a book or something like that, or maybe they won't watch anything at all. So they're not being exposed to this violent behavior. So afterwards, after the control group and the experimental group, they do their thing, the experimental group is exposed to the independent variable. You'll measure the dependent variable, so violent behavior, maybe watch the kids to see how many times the kids from the different groups maybe push another kid over or things like that. And you see if there is a difference between the group that was exposed to the violent behavior and the group that was not. And if there is a difference between these two, if the group, and like Bender found, that the group that was exposed to the independent variable, the seeing the adults, beating on that Bobo doll, it did cause a change or an increase in violent behavior afterwards, more aggressive behavior. All right, so that is an experimental study. It's the only thing that you can do to tell if one thing causes another, okay? Different types of research. You have qualitative and you have quantitative. Quantitative research refers to numbers, so maybe measuring how many hours per week you study and your GPA. That's all numbers right there. You can graph that. You can do different calculations to find a correlational coefficient and things like that. So quantity, number, quantity, that refers to data being in numbers. Qualitative data, qualitative means quality, descriptive data. It's words, So if you're watching some kids playing and you're writing down absolutely everything that they do in detail, that's qualitative data. All right, it's not numbers, it's words. That's qualitative. All right. So when you want to know about development, you're going to be watching different groups. You're going to want to compare maybe different groups or how people change throughout life. So you can set up a longitudinal study. In a longitudinal study, you'll have a group, maybe a group of kids that are 5 years old. In a longitudinal, you'll come back maybe in 5 years and measure. Maybe you're measuring happiness. You'll measure them again when they're 10 years old. You'll measure them again when they're 15 years old, and then 20 and 25. So you're going to have that one group and you're going to be with them for the long haul, for a long time. You're going to be measuring them over and over again throughout their life. So it's the same group as they age, and you want to see maybe how their happiness level changes as they get older. So longitudinal, you have that one group that you're with them for the long haul, and you're going to come back and keep on measuring them to see how they change. Cross-sectional is an easier way to do it. It doesn't take as long. You go out and you go get different age sections in society. So maybe you get get some 5-year-olds, some 10-year-olds, some 15-year-olds, and then you compare their maybe their scores on a happiness scale, something like that. So you're going out and you're getting different age groups. So measure different age sections, and this will give you some idea of how happiness changes maybe throughout life, but you have to worry about cohort effects, meaning that that there might be differences in the different groups depending on like what's going on during their time. Say you were interested in finding out how often somebody uses the internet. If you went and you measured, the use of the internet of a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, all the way up to 50, you're going to see a big difference, right? You're probably going to see people in their teens using the internet way more than, say, people who are 75. And it's probably because of lack of exposure, So that's the cohort effect. Maybe people who were born before the internet was around, they're going to be less likely to use it. So that's that cohort effect. So you have to be careful of that when you use cross-sectional because of the events. Maybe they're just not as exposed to it. Sequential or cross-sequential refers to kind of a bit of both of these. You have, say, a group of 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds. You measure their happiness. Then you come back 5 years later and you measure them again. So it's kind of like you're doing both of these. You're getting a section, so you're getting 5, 10, 15-year-olds. You're measuring them all at one time. Then you come back 5 years later and you measure them all again. So you're going to get the best data doing that, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work. So a lot of times people will use cross-sectional because you can real quick go out and get different groups information, or longitudinal and you have that one group that you keep on measuring. Now, a meta-analysis refers to going into the studies and combining a bunch of studies that have already been done and kind of getting a summary of what the research shows. So that's a meta-analysis. All right, you're going to want to do research ethically, so you're going to want to get informed consent. You're going to want to describe the research to the participants to let them know that it's voluntary, that information is going to be confidential, and so on. You should avoid deception, but you can use deception if you need to. For example, if you wanted to do a study to find out how helpful people are, if you tell them that that's what the study is about, they're probably going to be more helpful because they know that that's what they're measuring. Instead, maybe you say, oh, we're going to do a taste test and then maybe drop some paper to see how many people help out. So that's deception. You can use it to get more accurate results, but you're going to need to debrief the people afterwards to tell them really what the study was about. Communicating research results. So when a study is done, the researcher will report the results and will get it published. It needs to go out to peer-reviewed journals where the peers or scholars in the field will review it, and if they find the research is worthy, they will then publish it in the peer-reviewed journal. All right, research in developmental psychology is often used to set different laws and also to help with funding. Like research has been done on Head Start and how helpful it is, and that research has been used to get funding for Head Start. Other research has found that eyesight and learning a second language, that there's a critical period early in life. So now we've made changes to different policies, to different programs to make sure that eyesight is tested earlier, as well as in education, the second language is taught at an earlier age. So this research can be used for different social policy to create laws, to create programs, to get funding.